Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 55 of Relating to DevSecOps, where we explore the development, security, and operations issues of today so that we can solve real world problems with real world people on the ground as we get into this exciting world we call security and application security. A very, very exciting episode today. As we've been promising for something like a year and a half, we've gotten back into bringing guests onto the show to talk about their experiences and their paths into security. And today, Mike and I are joining you, but we also have a special guest, Hecber Cordova. Hecber, if you wouldn't mind saying hi, and introducing yourself.
Hi, Ken and Mike. I'm really happy to be here and on this episode. I'm Hecber Cordova, and I'm Director of Cloud Security at Royal Bank of Canada, and has been here for 5 years. And again, really happy to be part of this episode.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and I'm very excited to have you on the episode. We've done some work in the past, and I know your skill set and experience and kind of some of the ways you've tackled security at a holistic level. That's my buzzword for this podcast is holistic. So awesome to have you on as someone who has a ton of experience and has solved some of these cloud security issues that we talk about a ton. So thanks for being on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that intro, and Mike, thank you for adding the color commentary. I am excited to ask the first question that we haven't asked in a very, very long time, which is, Hecber, what does DevSecOps mean to you? We ask this question to anyone that we bring on, and are often asking this at conferences. And the reason that we ask is that it seems like it means a different thing to everyone. And depending on who you talk to, they sort of have a different feeling in their head, and they also have a different definition. So what is DevSecOps in your world?
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. I have seen so many different definitions. So for me, DevSecOps is more about collaboration and alignment between three different teams. That is basically developers, security, and operations. So for that, I'm going to start with Devops, because I think that's when it started. When we started listening and understanding what Devops means, for me, it means that now developers and operation trying to work together. And by alignment, what I mean is that now the developers are going to have responsibilities on the operation of their application. So now they're going to get paid, or they really need to make sure that their application is going to be able to operate, to have resiliency into their application. And the operations team is going to be able now, it's going to have responsibility to make sure that the application goes into production on time, and it's going to be fast enough to hit the market and the requirements for the business. And that means that they're going to need to help that application team to get that application all the way into production. So that translated at the end into a lot of new capabilities that we are seeing today, like CI/CDs. But for me, that's an output that came after those teams working together and aligning in responsibilities. So now these developers are going to have that resiliency responsibility from their application, and then operations is going to have those responsibilities, making sure that application is going to hit those deadlines. So now the part that was missing into this picture was security. So the security folks were, okay, now I want to introduce all these security features into these, or requirements into the application. But with all these different processes happening right now and all this automation that these two teams were able to build together, now I need to get into them to get as fast as we need. So now we extend that alignment all the way into security, just to make sure that security also is going to have responsibilities in to make sure that application is going to hit the market, is going to also hit their resiliency requirements, but also developers are going to have also that responsibility on the security side of things. So they really need to make sure that they're building a secure product, and operation also needs to make sure that the platform or the platform they are building where this application is being hosted is secure enough. And that also translated into building more automation into the security controls, being able to start shifting left, start building those policies, all the way into that pipeline. So as new code is being shipped, then we can start looking into that code and start providing feedback right away. So for me, that at the end is DevSecOps. However, I've seen a lot of things right now out there that have seen Devops teams that they are only building pipelines or CI/CD systems, but you still have an operation team, you still have a development team, which may not fully align to that mentality. But independent of that, independent of the titles, I think at the end, if we get the right communication, collaboration between the teams and the right alignment and goals, then we are getting DevSecOps.
Got it. So really, it sounds like DevSecOps to you is more about the relationship with the people, and that everything else sort of comes out of that developing relationship. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Got it. So, and you said something really interesting, which we've talked about a bit before in the show, which is that security also has a responsibility to deliver the business product, which I always find like that is one of the things that we always miss, right? We're kind of always talking about securing the product and going through all of these frameworks and security controls and adding all these things that are traditionally seen as blockers or as gates. And yes, I think you're completely right. We do have this responsibility to deliver this product. Is there anything that you could say to security folks that are maybe just having that aha moment to say, oh, I guess I am responsible for delivering this thing? What was the light bulb moment for you that sort of clicked where you were like, I actually have to help these folks do what they need to do? Or did it happen gradually for you? Have you always been that way?
Yeah, I think probably I've always been that way. I think, I know even 20 years ago, I remember joining a startup. That startup was doing elections systems, so it was automating all the processes for an election system, and it was quite small. So I was responsible for security of some of the products, and I found myself that the best way to get the security working was basically working with the developers themselves. So it was really good working with the developers, trying to make sure that that all these different security controls are embedded into a product. For example, from creating at that time servers out of golden images with all the hardening embedded into a server, so that, but also making their life easier. So because they really wanted a product where they could deploy their application, it was helping them to build that product with all the security embedded into it. So for them, it was a win-win because, oh, I don't need to build now the server. It comes out of the box and it has security already in it. So and so for me was a way for them to start using all these different security products, and it started adding on and on more and more products into these different services, but always understanding how the application works and what is going to really stop this application. And there is something that helps you to align on time to market is an election process, because you're going to have a fixed day. So you need to get that product that day. So whatever you're thinking on doing or whatever your responsibilities are, you better align with everybody, because you really need to make sure that that product is going to be ready that day.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because I do think that a lot of us think especially on the industry side. I think, I'm on the consulting side, and sometimes it's easier for folks that have been in consulting to sort of get this point. But, your project has a start date and an end date, and there might be a little bit of wiggle room. But the stakes vary depending on what the client is or whatever. But to have the idea of this date that is an immovable object drive the way that you approach security is a really interesting take. And I'm trying to think of ways to help folks understand that are coming into consulting from industry, where I think release dates or features that go into a release date are a bit more fluid. It's like, oh, if we don't hit the release, like it's not the biggest deal,
Do a
or like what
soft
are the
you do a
stakes?
soft release, soft release.
Yeah, yeah, soft release. But it's like with an election, you really it's make or break. That is when it happens, and if it's not there, it's not there, and there's no sort of like, oh, well, we'll push it off. We'll push that to the next release. So really interesting point, Mike. Do you have any like sort of hard dates like that you faced in recent years? Probably government or something.
Uh, no, I mean, I did work on an election software in a similar vein a while back, which was pretty interesting for the same reason. Both terrifying, but also, yeah, a hard deadline where someone has to get elected, and so you have to make sure things work. But no, I think most of the time it's like we want to ship this feature or we need to ship this feature, but it's not, make or break. So
Yeah, I mean, you just have so much more flexibility when it comes to what features you pick to put into the release, or maybe something didn't get into it or whatever. Especially, I'm seeing this a lot in like over-the-air updates for like phones and, cars and video games and things of that nature. It's like, we'll get to it next time. We just released the
yeah.
half-finished thing.
I saw a great thing on Twitter, which was encourage people to update their iPhones, not because there's a new security patch, but because there's a goose emoji that just got added. So it's like, this is the way we get people to upgrade.
But that's probably the best way, and I love that you said that, because at the end, it's easier when you're going to be updating a product because you're going to get a new functionality, and by the way, and you're getting also this security update. But then people is going to be more prone to update rather than just updating because there is a security update. Many people, they may not care what that security update may be, and I think in security we also needs to help on that. I mean, and that was one of the reasons why I think when working with developers at the beginning and shipping a VM or shipping a server that was already working for them helped them, because they didn't care that much about those security features. They cared about the system that they could use, and something like that just keeps happening over time. So I've seen many use cases like that. I was also into consultancy before, and it was quite similar. It's like, well, shipping security into a product. People see the product, but security is already embedded into it, so they see the benefit and they can start using the product. It's just that just got security embedded into it. But I think that's probably the hard part. I mean, make sure that you get that product that they can start using, or that feature that they can start using, and then you add just security as part of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Mike, you were going to say something?
Well, I wanted to put on my cynic hat for a minute for something that you said, which
Do you
was
take it
that I
off
thought
ever,
was
or
really
no?
no, I don't. I don't say things for a while, but then I never actually take off the cynic hat. But you said something that's interesting about how DevOps before DevSecOps was created, which was developers being responsible for releases, being responsible for performance, for resiliency, all of those things. And I think that they have adopted that pretty well. People want to have a performant application. People want to have a resilient application that's not going down all the time. But I guess my challenge would be, I don't feel like there's the same level of adoption of security. Like a developer is going to make their app, resilient and perform well, but I don't know if there's been the same internalization. It still feels like an outside in kind of battle at times. So, I mean, I wonder what your thoughts are there on why do you think that hasn't happened? Why isn't, security just another kind of attribute of a good performing application like resiliency or, speed is, do you think?
That's a good question. I think they still care about how performant their application is, because that's the thing. It's not part of the functionality, but it's affecting the functionality. So security, they don't see that necessarily affecting the functionality of the application. So the second thing is that we are good at implementing new tooling, and now we are even better at adding more tooling into those CI/CD pipelines. But something that we are not seeing right now is that, and that's why that alignment is quite important, is that we're making things in many cases slower rather than faster. So we are adding more and more tools, we start adding more and more noise. And then what I'm seeing is that a lot of these developers, they are not really looking at that because it's a lot of noise. And I
Yeah.
think we need to get a lot better and that, because that's what I'm seeing a lot. So a lot of noise, and then they just don't pay attention. And I do understand, and that's why I think we need to have more empathy as well,
Mhm.
and in both sides. I mean, I think developers need to have more empathy also on the security side of things, but we as security guys, we need to have empathy on developers and operations to understand what their role is, what their goals are, so we can build whatever we are building aligns to their goals as well, because otherwise it's quite difficult.
Yeah. No, I think we'd both agree with you there.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, one of the things we've covered before is what are folks incentivized to do? Um, your developers are incentivized to ship a product on time, and your security folks are usually incentivized to find things in the product that breaks it. So,
And
yeah, I see a
and
smile. So go ahead.
no, I mean,
Reactions.
and I think that's probably how they see us, like the team that is breaking things instead of trying to put things together and helping them to build what they need. So and that's really bad. I mean, I know that there is a lot in finding bugs, and there is a lot in saying, oh, I found all these bugs in your application. And sometimes you see people with that happy face telling developers all the different security issues that they found. And I think that we really need to change that, because I mean, if you're in their position, I don't believe that they feel happy because you found all of that. I mean, it's like how can you help them actually to reduce that? I mean, for example, I work mostly on AWS side of things. So something that is difficult on AWS is building policies that grant access to resources. It's so difficult, and AWS is adding more and more conditions to make policies more and more difficult to create. So instead of saying, "Oh, your policy is wrong," why don't you help them to create policies in an easier way? So it's like, what do you need? Create policies. So build a service that, and there are many open source services, by the way, out there. That what do you need? Read access. Then it can build that policy for you. You don't need to spend time building that policy and looking at the complexity of the policy. It can build that for you. So just tell me what you need, and then we can just craft the right policy automatically for you. And then you are helping them, and you are also helping you, because now you know that that policy is going to comply with all those security requirements that you have when granting access, like least privilege. But that's a way in which you can help them. But you need to start thinking that way. Otherwise, it's going to be quite difficult actually to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are. I think that the way that we look at our roles has changed over time. Maybe not changed, or maybe I've just gotten, I don't know, more empathetic or something. But I think that we've one of the things that I can't remember who said it to me, but it's basically, we look at ourselves when people first get into security, like you said, they get excited about finding bugs or pen testing or hacking, or it's all very cool. It's such a cool industry to be in and get to. But what people pay the top researchers and the top people for is the recommendation, the remediation, the assistance in solving the problem. You don't get paid to find bugs. You get paid to help fix them, or to identify them, or to recommend, or to remediate. And so what you're saying is right in that registers very well with what we want to convey too here, which is you know making that easier for your engineering teams, or helping to develop that, is really where the magic is. That's what makes you a good engineer, a good security representative, not the ability to find the most obscure bugs, but your ability to help to fix them, or to identify how to fix this at the root. Um, so that's, I mean, I'm right there with you, and I don't think it's necessarily even just empathy, but understanding what your role is, you know, like what you're there to do. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the incentive bit, is that too long we've looked at security folks to incentivize them to find things. How many vulnerabilities have you found? What severity are they? How big are they? How complex are they? And not enough time spent on how do you fix the thing that you found.
And that's the point. I mean, when people start doing threat modeling, what they really want to start finding is gaps. And if they don't find any gap, then well, probably the threat model is wrong. And that may not always be the case. And but that's the way in the industry actually looks at security. Like the more problems or issues you find, then the better you are. And well, probably we just need to help them to find more solutions rather than more threats. We already know what the threats are. Then let's help them to find solutions. And I have another example of these. And this is quite funny because when we started on public cloud in this team was building VMs, EC2 instances, deploying them, but those instances also needed to pass a specific benchmark that was created by a compliance team. And in order to look at that benchmark and have the right audit record, they needed to email somebody on premise in order so that person can scan those instances on public cloud and tell them, oh yes, I mean those instances are good or are bad. And the problem is that emailing and scanning could take days. It's a couple of days now before you can have your golden image ready for somebody to consume. And then talking with different teams, we realized that there were APIs that we could use in order to start those scans just right away and then build another product that could parse all those results so that we could have those results right away. And then instead of days, we could have that in minutes. And that's a way in which you can help them actually to achieve the goal, because they really need to pass that, because otherwise compliance for them still was a gate. And now they can have things in minutes and not days. Now, it never stops there. And I think what I want to say is that we as security, we believe we build something and then that's done, let me move to a new one. But it's never the case. It's never the case, because once we build something, we start becoming product owners, and we need to start owning that product and understand what that means. Because later on, that product that now takes minutes, now developers wanted to take seconds, because now that's blocking something else, or the product is not delivering the right value because there are potential new extensions that you may want to add. And you need to have that mindset. You really need to have the product management mindset on every single control you build. Otherwise, and most of the failures that I have seen are related to that. You build something great, start working right away, people love it. 6 months later, you forget that you need to keep improving it, and then 6 months later, everybody start hating it. And I can tell you, I mean, product was great. Year later, many people started to hate the product. It's like, but it's not fast enough, or sometimes it fails, so I need to restart my scanning process. And then we were talking about resiliency. It's like something that we as security folks also needs to have in our every single product that we build. But that comes after, right, product ownership of any control that we are creating. And I have seen many failures like that. And this is not the only one. I have seen other controls that are exactly the same.
You bring up an interesting point about building security products for your engineering teams, and you talked about one of the things we always like to cover, which is places that you failed. I have a question for you that is just, given that we have security teams that are frequently understaffed or who have less personnel than engineering teams. And as you say, these security teams want to help. They build security products, but maybe they don't have the capacity to maintain them. What do you say to those security teams that are like, look, I've built this tool, I'm helping the engineers, I'm doing all these things, I'm empathetic, I have all this stuff, but we only have 3 people, development is 20 people, and we're trying to do this for an engineering team of 20 to 30 people, and we just don't have the staff to maintain. Do you have any advice for folks in that situation to help collaborate with these engineers to maintain these tools?
Yeah, I think the first one is that try to keep your ecosystem, especially if you have a really small team, also small, but that provides the most value. So try to focus on the things or the controls that are going to provide the most value, because just having 100 different systems, and if you cannot maintain any of those, it's as good as having 0 of those. Because the point is that I can assure you that at some point they're going to just be creating noise. So focus only on the ones that create the most value. And there is something else that is you really need, and you believe it's going to provide value, but you don't have the right capacity. Then this is where I've seen that many engineering teams are also able to help. We have built many products together between engineering and security, and in many cases they are willing to help if they see that the product that you are building is going to help them as well.
Yeah,
So
I
I would
guess
say,
they're invested in it, right? I mean, yeah.
so for me those are the two things. I mean, focus is only on the products that are going to deliver the most value, and then for those that you can't really maintain or keep supporting or adding, then work together with engineering, because most probably they really want to help you if they really understand how that product is going to help them.
Do you think that there's value? No, go ahead, Mike. Sorry. I'm
No, I was just
monopolizing the
gonna.
conversation, Mike. Can't you tell?
I, I mean, Hecber's just so interesting. We could talk about everything for hours. Well, I was gonna ask. I mean, I think this touches on something that I know you've done a lot of work on, and is related to security products, but also more about building security in, which is kind of the paved path mentality for building models and patterns and kind of processes for developers. And I think it's something that's taken off a lot more. Netflix was like huge on paved paths for cloud adoption. And I kind of wanted to hear, there's a lot of good talk about it, but I kind of wanted to hear what have been the kind of tug of war between paved paths and developers wanting to kind of do things the way they want to do, and how do you thread that needle to make sure you have the path paved well enough that no one's shooting themselves in the foot.
That's a really good question. First, it comes about. I mean, the first thing is working together with developers. You need to really partner with developers, and the way normally you do that is first about education. And you're gonna notice that many of the developers, they do have a really good security mindset. So he's trying to exploit that and make a benefit out of it for those developers that have that great security mindset. Having discussions with them and being always available and ready to help, and also provide solutions to them. In many cases, they are just eager to get a solution, and if you help them to get the right solution, then they're going to keep using that. And also trying to create some abstractions to the problems, because probably the same solution can help many different problems that are related. So trying to help them to see those problems that way, and so that they can see that the solution can help them in all those different use cases. But that's part of it, and the other part of it is always at the end is also going to be building guardrails, and guardrails are also specific at your use cases. I've seen that you can create really agnostic and generic guardrails, and that's okay. But for me, the ones that really are going to deliver value are the ones that are mapped to your use cases. I mean, when we talk about access management or identity and access management, is how are you using your identities, and how you're granting access to those identities, how those identities are deploying or accessing data. You really need to make sure that whatever you build and have guardrails that help you to understand when something is going out of that access pattern that has been built. But if you really want to scale, I think, you really need to partner with developers. You need to build that security mindset into them. And many of them are willing to, just need the right motivation. They just need to see you as a partner, not as a blocker. Because if everything they tell you, you're going to block them, then they don't want to talk to you again. So that's exactly what's going to happen. And sometimes I know that we don't want to see any risk, any threat, but sometimes there are small things that are really low risk. Just go go ahead sometimes. You need to go ahead. Otherwise, the bureaucracy of the system, of the process, is going to make things so slow that they're just going to feel like they don't have the right support. So in many cases, you need to balance that and make them and let them say, yes, what you are doing is right, just do it. Because it's low risk, and changing that's going to take a lot of time, and then it's not going to add the right value to them. So you really need to be able to have that balance. And once they start trusting you and they start looking and understanding how you think and how you help them, and you start seeing that they start developing this security mindset by themselves, and then they start reusing many of these different solutions that you has been building with them or discussing with them or designing with them many times, because they know that as they keep using it, well, they don't want to see any problem anywhere.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So Hecber, I know we're sort of, we told you we would only take 30 minutes of your time. So we're coming up right up against the marker here. I have a final question for you, but I want Mike to ask his final question first and put him on the spot, because that's what I want to do.
You always put me on the spot at the end. Yeah, no, I mean, I think you touched on it probably already and answered it a little bit, but where do you think security needs to go? How do we need to change to improve? And we're still, certain places are still struggling with the same issues we've been struggling with for years. So what's the pivot that we need to make? What are the changes we need to make to kind of finally make the impact that we need to make?
Yeah, I think I truly believe that we as security also we need to have a empathy with all the different teams that we work with, but also a product manager vision of all the different products that we create. We really need to understand if any single control or product that we build is now providing value, and how that's providing value. We really need to start seeing that, and we need to look at those products end to end. We need to start measuring whatever we are building, because in many cases we build things and now we have like 100 policies. I installed checkoff with all the policies and I added 20 more, and you know what? 50% of those are creating noise and nobody is paying attention. So are you looking at that? How you're measuring that? And so I keep saying empathy, because I think it's important that we understand that when we build something, if that's not creating the right value, even if we believe it is, then the developers are just going to start ignoring it. So I think that's quite important, why we need to have that empathy. And as security folks, we really need to use the same products that developers are using. And if developers are using, I don't know, Terraform to deploy, you use Terraform to deploy. Is either using Go to build operators, you use Go to build operators, and you see how difficult it is to use even your own products, your own controls. It's like, can I pass this through my set of controls? It can't. So, okay, what should I change? How can I make it better? How can I make it frictionless so that developers can start using it? But that's what I think. All that comes from that empathy. And also we need to get better at influencing, and we need to be really careful as we influence people, because again, we don't want to be seen as blockers. We don't want to be seen as the people that is always bringing all these different bugs and issues. We really need to be seen as people that is bringing solutions to make them faster, to make them be able to achieve their goals, because that's what they want. So that's how we shift from bringing issues to bringing solutions, and make sure that that's the only thing that we're bringing to those developers.
That reminds me of a technique that was used when I was early in my career doing account management, and it was basically that the support team, like the help desk team, which I was a part of at the time, was actually forced to go and do cold calls for sales. Like they were, for a week they were basically shadowing and doing cold calls for sales for the product, whatever, and at the time I was like, they just don't have enough money to pay all these salespeople, so they put me in the spot. But I think looking back on it, maybe it's good for us to spend a week or a day in the life of an engineer or a developer, a network engineer, whatever. Maybe it would be good for, somebody to actually perform that role for a couple of days and, figure it out, see how it looks, see how it feels.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, rotation. I mean, I remember seeing that in that election system company I used to work with for. So I remember sometimes talking to one of the VPs and saying, "Well, we need more people, even from HR, going to any of these projects, so that they really feel the pressure, and then they also feel more empathy for the teams that are working there." And in many cases, it worked. I mean, people that they used not to be in projects, we moved them to some projects to help on the delivery side of things. And when they came back to the company, they start having a different vision of the company, and they start introducing new services that could help many of the people that were working in projects. So yes, I think that helps a lot. And again, you really need to use the same products that you're trying to protect. You really need to use it. If you don't use it, I think I don't even know how you're building security control for those.
Yeah, no, I agree. Um, so my last question, and then we could probably wrap it up, is and it doesn't have to be long-winded, but and maybe you've already answered it in your last response, but um, for someone that's looking to get into DevSecOps, or they hear DevSecOps, maybe they listen to the podcast, they're saying, I want to do this. This sounds great. I'm into the empathy thing. I wanna help out. But they search DevSecOps, there's a ton of tools. There's Checkoff, there's Terraform, there's SaaS, there's DAS, there's all the application security, cloud security. Where do you think somebody could get their start? Maybe they're just a security engineer, and they want to go down this path.
Um, I believe, well, I would say that if you're a security person and you're not an engineer, or you don't have experience developing, I would say start developing, start practicing with those tools, start unlearning whatever you thought that you knew about programming, and start learning how programming is done today. That's the first thing. Um, Start building the same, um, or start using the same pipelines or ways that app teams are using today to deploy. Start using those yourself, build those yourself, start feeling how those work, and that is going to help you later to start working together with those DevSecOps teams, or those development teams. Because for me, security, when it comes into a specific domain, it means you as a security person, you fully understand that domain. So it means that you are into the DevSecOps. You really need to know what that development means. You need to know what operation means, when somebody needs to wake up in the middle of the night and now needs to go through many processes in order to get a privilege ID. Like, what does that mean? I mean, how can you make that simpler? It's still secure, but you need to feel that. You need to do it. So a person that is entering into DevSecOps needs to know all of that, needs to be able to use all these different systems, all these different products, and feel comfortable using that. And then after that, they can start thinking about Checkoff, OPA, or it's going to be SendGrep. There are many different tools. And I can tell you, those DSL, you're going to learn them. It's not going to be so difficult to learn. What you really need to learn is all the processes that development and operation teams are using today. And that's what is going to help you to integrate those tools.
Got it. Thank you. Well, I think that sort of wraps it up for us, Ekber. Any final words or questions, or anywhere folks can get a hold of you, Twitter, social media, you know, flags in the street, whatever, anything you want to plug or say before we close it out?
Yeah, I would say that there is a lot of good material out there. I mean, there is a cloud security forum in Slack. I would say that if people wants to know more about security, that's the best place. And the people is great. I mean, you can share any problems that you may have, and people is gonna answer right away. There are there are other good forums or discussions. There is this today is Thursday, so there is this application cloud security newsletter that comes every Thursday. That's a cloud security, I think TLDR, I think is the name. I need to. That's another good source. I would really check it out because I think it's quite important to understand what is happening today and connecting to all these sources and having a way to interact with different people and ask questions, understand what problems they're having and how they're trying to solve the problems. And well, I can guarantee you that you may find the answer for any problem that you may have there.
I agree. We'll drop some links for folks. I think I know the newsletter you're talking about and some of the forums. We can get those for you and put them in the show notes so folks can keep it easy and click through those. But yeah, that kind of wraps it up for us today. As always, thanks everyone for listening, and thank you, Hecber, for joining us today and being our first return guest as we sort of go down this path. If you're looking to reach us or Hecber, you can give us a shout on Twitter at R2DSO. You can email us at security@r2dso.com. And you're always welcome to leave comments and bits of paranoia in anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.